Hi, welcome to the Improved Garage YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something that involves more than the garage, and that's the internet and the Wi-Fi at your house, and how to make Wi-Fi really strong, how to make people have a really consistent experience, how I did it at my house, and some of the things that I've learned over the years. My background is in IT, so this is what I do for businesses all day, every day. So I took some of those same things and applied them to my house, and I'm going to talk about what I installed, how I did it, and how I've basically not had to touch anything for over 4 years and had a really good experience. So you'll see, there's a small section of equipment that's in my garage. So first let's talk about my house, how it's laid out, and kind of some of the challenges that I ran into at my home. So the house that I'm in is it's about 3,000 square feet. We have the garage is where we're at right now. There's a dining room and a kitchen. This is like one open area. We have a living room behind it. There's a hallway with a bathroom and a closet. Our master bedroom is here, and then there's 3 bedrooms for children here. There's a little laundry room here, a bathroom here. So our house has 4 bedrooms, and it has 3.5 baths. This is a half bathroom, but everything else is a full. So the challenges that I faced when I was looking at doing Wi-Fi in this house is that there really isn't a central point where I would have Wi-Fi coverage everywhere. If I install an access point, say here or here or here, there's dead zones in other places. Now, part of that is because of the size of the house, but another part of that is because of the materials the house is made out of. So I live in California. Our house, it has stucco on it. Stucco is like a concrete product, and in order to get stucco to stick to the exterior of a building, they use a wire mesh. And this wire mesh blocks Wi-Fi from transmitting through that stucco. So if you have good wireless here and there's a stucco wall here, that doesn't mean you're going to have good wireless here, because it has to travel through 2 sets of wire mesh to get into this bedroom. So I decided that I was going to treat my house kind of like I would treat one of my businesses, one of the companies that I work with. And what I did was I had my internet brought into my master bedroom, which I'm using Charter cable internet, which is fairly regular. Every house is going to be in a zone where they're either a Charter customer or a Comcast customer. There's other carriers too, Cox, but in California, primarily we're using Charter and Comcast. So the Comcast cable, or Charter cable rather, came into my house, and it was fed to all of the rooms. So in my closet in my master bedroom, which is about here, I installed a router which takes the internet, and the function of the router is to basically take the internet and to spread it out amongst all of the people that are inside your location. That's what a router does. Not all routers offer wireless. There are routers without wireless, and there are routers with wireless. In my case, I used a router without wireless, and in a business it would be called a firewall, but it's a firewall router box. A firewall just means that it has security features, but that's really not necessary for a home. I just used what I had access to. So in this box, I have a firewall/router, and I have a network switch. Now, a network switch, there's a silver one up here on that shelf, and I can kind of show you what one looks like here. So this is a network switch. It has mounting arms on it. Sometimes they have tabs on the side. It has a power connector on the back, and it has ports on the front, wired ports across the front. And most routers or firewalls are going to have 3 or 4 ports on them to plug devices into. There's a plug for your internet, and there's a plug for your devices. This switch allows me to connect more wired devices, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So in this closet, I have a router with a switch, and there is network cabling that was already run through my walls in order to make phones work inside my house. So they actually ran Cat5 cabling, which is a network cabling. So what I was able to do was take the cables that were already run in my house that all went over to the garage and run them back to the master bedroom. So that means that inside here I have a wired port for somebody to plug a computer in. In here I have the same thing. In here I have the same thing. In my living room I had one port on the wall, but I was able to use that to actually pull 4 ports through the wall. And this is all, this may sound a little advanced and it might be unnecessary, but just bear with me. The idea was to make as many things wired as possible to keep as few devices on the wireless as possible. We'll talk about why in a bit. So additionally, I ran a cable from the master bedroom through the attic to the garage that ends up right here. And that's what feeds this switch and wireless access point that you see up high on the wall there. So now I've got a distribution through my house of wired internet. So what I then did was I took wireless access points. And a wireless access point is a device that its sole job is to provide a Wi-Fi signal, just wireless signal throughout your house. And there are many manufacturers that make them. Some popular ones include Meraki, Aruba, Cisco, Arachnus, Ubiquiti, and I went with Meraki's. They were something that I had access to, and that's what we sell at my company, so I'm very comfortable with them. I know them very well. Really, any of those products are going to be great from a residential standpoint. They're designed for businesses, so the needs of a home tend to be less than a business. So what I did for those wireless access points is I installed them in a couple locations throughout the house. So I have a wireless access point here in the hallway that services this whole section of the house. I have a wireless access point that's here between the kitchen and the living room. That services this whole section of the house. I had trouble getting Wi-Fi signal in my backyard. Even though I was really close to this, because of the stucco materials, it's difficult to get Wi-Fi back there. So I added an outdoor access point up here outside my living room in the backyard. So I have a wireless access point that provides wireless through this whole section of the area. In my garage, I added a wireless access point as well. Originally, I didn't need this. My iPhone had no problem connecting to the kitchen one because this isn't a stucco wall, so there isn't that mesh here. It's just wood and drywall. But I installed at one point I installed a sprinkler controller that is Wi-Fi based, and that's over here on this wall. And that was having trouble connecting back to the kitchen reliably, so I added another wireless access point here. So my house is 3,100 square feet. I have 4 wireless access points. Really, you don't necessarily need one in the garage if you don't care about the coverage inside the garage, and you don't necessarily need one in the backyard if you don't care about coverage back there. So really, I could do this with 3 or 2. Now these wireless access points, a key component of them is that they have a cable that runs to them, and that cable goes back to the master bedroom, to where this switch is. So there's a physical cable that runs through my attic that connects to this. There's a cable that runs and connects to this. And there's a cable that runs and comes over here and connects to this switch, which then has a wireless access point coming off of it. The reason why I put a switch here is because I wanted to have more than just one port in my garage, and that's a good way to do so. So why do we need so many wireless access points? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, the antennas on a Wi-Fi router or on a wireless access point are really strong. They're designed to send Wi-Fi signals long distances to connect to devices. The problem is that we're using devices like this that have very small antennas that are embedded in them, and they are not designed with the power, the ability to send signals as far as the wireless access points are. So we need to have them spread out so that they're a little bit closer to these devices so that this device can talk back as well as being able to listen to the wireless access point. The second thing is the amount of devices in your average home is increasing exponentially. And the reason for that is because all devices end up being smart now. So when I think of my own house, There are 5 people that live at my house right now, and myself, my wife, 3 kids, and we have about 60 devices that are connected to our internet. And that might seem like a lot. You might think, oh, it's because you're an IT guy and you have all these computers and stuff like that. But really, that's not the case. 3 kids that each have their own desktop computer. 2 of them have laptops as well. Tablet, a Fire tablet. So there's 6 devices right there. Anybody with an Apple Watch or an Android watch, that's automatically going to connect. Anybody who has a phone is automatically going to connect. Devices like your smart TVs. So we have a TV in the dining room, we have a TV in the living room, we have a TV in the master bedroom, and then each of the kids' bedrooms all have TVs as well. So we have, 6 TVs in our house. Each one of those is a smart TV, each one of those connects to the internet and can send and receive data. Other devices like Roku's, Apple TVs, a Fire Stick if you have a Fire Stick. Other smart home devices, like we have a Nest thermostat, we have a couple Google Home devices, the Google Home display in our kitchen, and we have a couple of the Google Home Minis that just play music, the little speakers. So I guess what I'm getting at is there are a surprising amount of devices in the average household. When I talk to most homeowners about how many devices they have, and I say, you have 40 devices connected to your internet. Really? They can't believe that, because it just doesn't seem right to them. But when you think about it, your average person has 4 or 5 devices themselves, and then there are all these shared devices throughout the house. So the average wireless access point is designed to handle 20 to 30 simultaneous devices that are accessing, sending, and receiving data. And wireless standards are governed by something called Airtime Fairness. And this is getting a little deep, but just bear with me here. What this means is, if I have multiple wireless devices, so let's say that each one of these things, these are all wireless devices. And we have this wireless access point. So this is the wireless access point, these are devices. So what ends up happening is, all of these devices are connected to this wireless access point. And this wireless device asks for data, and this wireless access point sends it to it. And this works in a one-on-one state. So this access point talks to this device. Then 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 it can go back to this device. So even if your devices aren't requesting data, if they're not being used, if they're doing background processes, if they're doing updates, if they're simply powered on, the access point will reach out to them and say, do you need anything right now? And the device will say no. And then it goes on to the next device. So what ends up happening, if you have a weak Wi-Fi signal that's in one portion of your house, like here, and you've got a device over here that's very weakly connected to it, what will happen is this device will reach out to this, it'll wait for a response back, which this device probably can't give it because the antenna strength, like I talked about earlier, and then this will have to time out before it's able to go on to the next device. So what that means is, if you don't have a good distribution of Wi-Fi and you don't have good connectivity throughout all of the points in your house, devices over here will slow down devices that are over here, even though they're right next to the Wi-Fi. Secondly, there's this concept that a lot of Wi-Fi vendors are using right now, these mesh networks. So when we talk about mesh networks, we're talking about like a Netgear Orbi, the Eero, the Google Nest, the Ubiquiti Amplify, and there are a lot of others out there, but those are kind of the popular ones, and they are a mesh Wi-Fi network. And those normally come with 3 of these things that they look like a tall hockey puck, and one of them is the router, and 2 of them are mesh access points. And what they're doing is the router, so we'll draw a little picture here. The router is connected to your internet. So we'll just draw a little cloud. Internet, this is your router. And then there are these mesh access points that are elsewhere in your house. So, how do these work? Well, The internet comes into the router through a wired connection. The router has all of the internet available to it. So let's say you're paying for, you've got a Charter Ultra package and you've got 400 over 20, and that's your internet speed that you're paying for. So I'm paying for 400 megs of internet. The router is going to have all 400 megs of internet. If you're a wireless device that's, say, over here, you're going to connect directly to the Wi-Fi that's offered by the router through the air. And you're going to have basically whatever your signal strength is of Wi-Fi available. So if you're connected at 400 or 800 megs, which is reasonable for a modern day device, my iPhone can do 866 megs. So let's say this is connected at 650. That means that it's going to have this entire 400 available to it. But a device that's over here is going to be connected to the Wi-Fi on here, to that device. And what ends up happening when you're talking through Wi-Fi with a mesh device is that this device needs to talk to this device, and then this device needs to relay that to this device. So if this has a maximum amount, let's say 800 megs, and it's connected to this at 800 megs, this device is actually only going to get half of that because this needs to talk twice. So this ends up being 400 as its theoretical maximum, even if it's connected at the 800. If you have a device that's further out of the range and it's connected at maybe 200, then you'll get, this maximum speed, the 200, because you'll have the 400 available to it as well as the 200 to your device. So mesh topology doesn't really work incredibly well, especially in larger infrastructures. It's way better than just having one router sitting in the corner. Like, don't get me wrong. If we look at this house that I have set up here, if I went with a mesh system and I had my router here and I had a mesh device here and a mesh device here, it would be decent. But it's never going to be nearly as good as having a wired connection from here to here. Because what that means is this has the entire internet. This has up to 1,000 available to it, which is what the wired internet is. This has up to 1,000 available to it. And those can distribute from that 1,000 whatever they need to, instead of being cut down by every hop or every mesh device that's in the middle. So where I've got my 400 here, everybody has 400 and 400 available to them at these points. So no matter where you are maximum of 400, because that's what my internet is. And then what you actually get is dependent upon your current Wi-Fi connection speed to this device, which gets worse as you go further out. So, for somebody that's in this area, it's probably around 800. For somebody that's in this area, it's probably around 600. And as you go further out, it drops to, 400 and beyond. And what that means is I don't have to fight with devices that are over here in this area for my Wi-Fi. Everybody that's over here is connected to this wireless access point. Everybody that's over here is connected to this access point, and they can talk simultaneously. So my device here can talk at the same point as someone else's device over here, and they can communicate together and not have to wait for each other to finish talking in order to continue going. Which is great when you're talking about having 60 devices and having to wait for every single one of them. And this happens very fast. So, it's not something that's incredibly noticeable until you get to 20 or 30 devices that are connected to a single wireless access point, and some of them have weaker signals and things of that nature. So what did it require for me to do this? Well, I purchased a router, which is what is here. I purchased one without Wi-Fi because I wanted the wireless access points to be responsible for Wi-Fi, and because this isn't really a good spot for me to be broadcasting Wi-Fi from, this closet in my master bedroom. So I have my internet directly connected to that. It's got a wired connection. I ran a cable through my attic from my closet in my master bedroom through the attic to the living room, and I ran a cable to here. I plug those into the router or into a switch if I need more ports than what the router has. And then these wireless access points broadcast the same Wi-Fi network. So they broadcast my Wi-Fi, which is called My Wi-Fi is Faster Than Yours. It can be called whatever you want it to be. Insert name of Wi-Fi network here. And it broadcasts that out from these 2 points, and devices connect to this wireless access point when you walk through the house. And as you go over here, they roam from this AP to this AP. And they go back and forth based on which one has the stronger signal to them. And that's because these wireless access points are smart enough to talk to each other and to tell you where to go. So I'll get a little bit more in depth about the products that I used. I'm currently using a Meraki firewall. It's a Meraki MX67. I have a 24 port switch in this closet because I have some wired ports throughout the house that I'm feeding off of it. My wireless access points are Meraki MR33s. I have one here, one in the garage. I have an outdoor access point, which is an MR72. So those are the particular products that I used. And those are on the expensive side. I wouldn't expect somebody to use them for their average home environment. Their single access point is about $600. But there are much less expensive options out there that are still good. Brands like Aruba and Ruckus, and I talked about Ubiquity is their wireless access points are dirt cheap. So you can do the same thing with some other brands that end up being less expensive. I picked Meraki because my company sells them, because I had access to the equipment, and because I have the ability to have a lab at my house, which allowed me to learn the products better and to be able to better talk to them, the customers. So, in the future, I might swap them out for other hardware as time goes on, but for right now, I'm really happy with them. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't really touched them in 4 years. I installed everything when we moved into the house. I created the Wi-Fi networks, and things have just worked really, really well. As devices have scaled, as we're up to 60, 70 devices, I have really strong signal. The only thing that I really had to change was I added a wireless access point in my garage about 2 years ago to deal with the smart sprinkler system that was having trouble connecting to the wireless access point that was in my kitchen. So if you're considering if you're moving into a larger house, especially one that might be stucco, and you're looking for having really strong, reliable wireless networks, I think that it's really worth the money to invest in having some cabling done to where the wireless access points should be throughout your house, having somebody come in and install wireless access points, or if it's something, you can probably walk yourself through it. There are some helpful places out there like the Reddit Ubiquity forums. There's a lot of these manufacturers have guides on how to set things up, and they're fairly easy to do. You don't have to have a network engineering background to do it. But a lot of companies, like my company specializes in business IT, there are a lot of companies that specialize in doing business and home, small business and home. There are a couple nearby to me that I've given recommendations to customers to before, and they've had a really good experience. And when you get a system here like this that is designed for enterprise and really is designed to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with a lot of people coming and going to and from a business, you get these really robust pieces of equipment that are designed to last a long time. And in a business, we expect hardware to last 3 to 5 years. You should easily be able to get 5 years out of it in your house. And some of the lesser hardware, like if you go out and you just buy a Netgear router, and I'm not picking on Netgear, but if you go out and buy a Netgear router, a D-Link router, or an ASUS router, or whatever it may be, the average life expectancy of a home router is 2 years, give or take. And usually you outgrow them long before they die, but the life expectancy of those devices is less. So that's how I created my network at my house. It's a little bit more elaborate than it needs to be. I tried to simplify it here on the charts. But the method of having a router in a centralized location with a set of wireless access points that are directly connected by cable back to that location, it just brings a far superior wireless technology or wireless capability to your household, and make sure that your users and your guests have a really good experience, and that you don't have to worry about things like my Netflix is buffering because it doesn't have my Roku doesn't have a good signal to my wireless access point. It allows me I can literally watch 4K at every TV in my house at the same time and not have to worry about having problems with Wi-Fi congestion. Now obviously you need to have the internet behind it to be able to support that. So if you have some If you live out in the middle of nowhere and you have a really slow internet connection and the most that you can get is a DSL that's 10 megs, this is probably overkill. But your average household can get cable at this point, and cable, I can buy a gig of cable at my house if I want to. They offer it to me. It's $120 a month to have a gig of cable. I just don't need it. The 400 is more than enough, and it's about half the price, so that's what I have. You know, the internet is available to you. You might as well make it fast for your devices and make sure that you have a good experience and that you can grow over time. These devices are pretty simple to set up and monitor and manage. And some of the enterprise devices actually have some really cool features. Like I can throttle certain services that my kids are using. So if your kids play video games all the time and they download these big giant updates that take up all of your internet and make things really slow, you can throttle certain types of services. Like I can just say, hey, Steam, I want you to only be able to use up to 100 megs of my 400 megs of internet. It's still a ton of internet. It's still more than enough. But it means that my Netflix isn't hiccuping while my kid is downloading an update for one of his video games. So hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat below. I'll do my best to answer them. Really, if networking or computers is something that scares you, I'd recommend reach out to somebody locally that specializes in small business IT that might be able to do something in your home that is kind of what they do for small businesses. And I think you'll have a really good experience, and it's going to be worth the money that you pay for the installation and the cable work to have everything done, because it's going to be really dialed in when you're done and you're not going to have to mess with it for a while. And when you're home, you should be able to enjoy the time that you have. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already.